Hi, my name's Drew and I'm going to be walking you through the Lance 1575 today. We're going to start right up front here with the coupling and uncoupling procedure. As this coupler sits now, this would be the locked position. You do know when you are completely fully locked because you have these two vampire teeth and we want those to be flush with the frame there. When we unlock it, it's going to hold back in that unlocked position. From this position, we would raise the jack 3 inches above your ball and drop. We're going to center your ball underneath the coupler here and then lower that jack back down on top of that ball. Once we are fully seated on that ball, we are going to then slide this up, again paying special attention that those two vampire teeth are engaged there on the frame. Tow chain hooks here. These guys are going to be crossed underneath your coupler, something like this. Kind of got a little bit of a mess here. Crossed underneath your coupler like this, hooked onto the receiver hooks on your vehicle, something like that. Tow chains do need to be crossed in the state of Texas, and it is against the law for them to make contact with the pavement at any time. So we're going to want to keep those high off the ground, but still allow enough radius for you to make your left and your right hand turns. 7-way plug here. This is going to link your tow vehicle and your camper as one. Going to plug into your 7-way receptacle on the bumper, give you full function to your vehicle's lights, marker lights, tail lights, braking system, things like that. We do have a smart jack right up front here. What differentiates this from a standard jack is the hitch height recall as well as the auto retract. Setting both of those features are outlined here on this sticker on the side. Other than that, operation is very typical of what you would see from an electric tongue jack. Up or down operation here on the arrows. And then you have a light, halo light on the underside. Lights your way if you're doing any coupling, uncoupling after dark, or gives you a point of reference if you're backing up to it in the dark. Manual drive for this jack is going to be located underneath the cover here. That is a 3/4 inch drive nut. You'll find that they're 3/4 inch. It's going to be a common thread throughout the camper. Your spare tire is going to be a 3/4 inch drive. Lug nuts are going to be sized 3/4 inch. So you'll hear me reference that probably a few more times throughout the camper. 20-pound propane tank here, same variant you're going to find on any gas grill, open and close valve on the top, easily exchangeable at any filling station, held to the unit with a tension band. If we go ahead and release the tension off of that band, of course unscrew the pigtail here, we can go ahead and lift that tank out to be serviced. Directly behind that, we have a brand new Interstate D-cycle battery. One thing to keep in mind with that is going to be just good general battery maintenance. What that's going to entail for you is 2 or 3 times a year, we are going to remove these vent panels and check the water level. There's a clear marked water level in there and we want to maintain that with distilled water. So also going to utilize the battery disconnect switch anytime you are storing the unit for periods of long-term storage. Here, once we turn this corner, we'll get eyes on that. Since we're talking about it, let's go ahead and get eyes on this battery disconnect switch here. Easiest way to use that is if you can go ahead and remove the key that would be disconnected. If we turn the key in, it locks in and then you can't take it out. Again, that's used for periods of long-term storage to help keep any of those background draws off of that battery that would wear and tear on it as time goes by. In this cabinet, we have a little tap light up top here. That's going to light this cabinet. We have one on the other side as well. And then we have this switch, which is going to give you a couple LED lights on either side of that tongue. Again, helps if you're doing any of that loading and unloading after dark, or you need to light that space. You have that on-off switch there as well. Reaching into this compartment, I'm going to go ahead and pull out your stabilizer jack crank handle. This unit has stabilizer jacks on all 4 corners. Now these are for stabilization, they're not for leveling. We're going to put your crank handle over the stud there on the outside. We will go ahead and rotate that down. And what you're doing here is it's going to be best suited if you handle these with a light touch. So come down, make contact with the pavement, maybe a quarter turn more just to shore everything up. Same on the way up, there is no real need to go overly tight. And again, we're not using those for leveling. So if we're leveling from front to back, we're gonna use the main tongue jack up front. Leveling from left to right is gonna be done with your tires and your choice of a leveling kit. Moving on here, we have your water pump here. Open access to that for any winterization. You're gonna do that right here. What that is going to entail is you're going to first bypass the Truma system, and we'll get to that a little later. And then once that Truma system's been bypassed and you have dumped all the rest of the water from the unit, you're going to use this hose here as a vacuum hose. You would insert this directly into your bottle of antifreeze. And then if we come a little further back here, you're going to see a valve. If we turn that valve into the inline position with that hose, from now on, if we go and we, of course, use the water pump, but we turn on each fixture, it's going to draw that antifreeze up through the hose into that fixture that we have open. It's important that we then turn on both the hot and the cold side of each fixture, and once we see that antifreeze come out of the faucet, we of course know we're fully winterized there. Just going to return that valve to the correct position there. And moving on. We have your Truma vent here. Nothing too crazy to speak of. Is an exhaust vent as well as an intake, so just don't restrict the flow. And that's basically it. Blows hot air when it's on. Just be best suited to keep things away from it. Previous owner has these bug screens installed here, which is definitely going to be my recommendation if you're purchasing a new unit from us. Be smart like the previous owner of this was and invest in the bug screens. Other than keeping the bug screens installed here, and this is the refrigerator vents that we're talking about now, for that appliance specifically, other than installing the the screens here, it's going to be a good idea to go ahead and give it a visual inspection a couple times a year. Make sure nothing's gotten in, make sure nothing's nesting in there, things like that. So these screens do an excellent job of keeping the critters out, and that's what we're aiming for. Below that, we have your outside shower, access to hot and cold water, nothing too crazy or out of the realm. You do have a little hard on-off switch there. What I have seen is that since people don't constantly see water running from this fixture, they can actually forget that they have the valves on here. When this is in its stowed position, it's actually orientated towards the door. You close the door, and I've seen people dump water to the inside of their camper, so just something to keep in mind. Below that, we have your water ports here. First on the left here is going to be your potable water fill. That's going to be your off-grid option there on the left. That's how we're going to fill that onboard water tank. The fitting on the right is going to be your city water connection. You'll utilize that anytime you do have access to full-time running water. For your potable water fill, you'll stick a garden hose directly in there. You'll fill it up till it overflows. Once it's full, cap it off. We do need to use that onboard water pump to pressurize that system and make that water usable. So that's going to draw that up to the fixture so you can go ahead and use it. Pressure is also very important here when we talk about the city water connection. Although we're not going to use the water pump to pressurize that system because city water is pressurized directly from the line. More often than not, it is overpressurized for what these units are rated for. So we're going to use a water pressure regulator to reduce that water pressure. Generally, the working range is anywhere in between 40 and 75 psi. Water pressure regulator we include for you today is going to be in between 40 and 50 psi. If that happens to not be enough pressure for you, feel free to upgrade that to a high flow or adjustable pressure regulator as long as you keep that below 75 psi. Water pressure regulator is going to hook directly onto the spigot side of the hose, then your hose onto that, and then of course you rotate the trailer connection here to attach that, of course, again, to the trailer connection. Right here we have your cable, park cable, satellite inlets. Those are just a standard RG6 cable fitting that does pass through to the designated TV area of the camper. Just your standard cable fitting. Some higher end campgrounds will offer a park cable service, and just about every satellite provider these days is offering a package geared towards RVers. Either way, again, inlet to the services, they're either going to pass through to the designated TV area or to the other side of the camper, so you could have an outside TV there. 30 amp 110 volt power supply here. Only plugs into the unit one way, so you do have a L-shaped prong here. Just make sure you are lining that up correctly. Give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right, that locks it in. Then you do have a secondary collar here to screw down, lock it in further. While we're here to the slide, it's a good time to talk about slide out maintenance. What that's going to entail for you is using a lubricant for the tracks here, as well as a seal conditioner for your seals. So once every 90 days, we are going to use a dry silicone lubricant here on these tracks. Now you have both of these tracks up top and bottom, left to right. So 4 tracks total. Spray them down with that silicone lubricant, run the slide in and out to dissipate that lubricant, and you'll be good to go for the next 90 days. At that same time, we're going to go ahead and condition these seals as well. Now you have a set of seals inside and out, because the slide does seal in both directions. We're going to spray those down. Of course, follow the directions on the product that you're using. Once you wipe off the excess, you're good to go for it for the next 90 days. Also, while we're talking about maintenance, let's just knock it all out of the park here when it comes to structural maintenance as well. Anywhere 2 pieces come together, you're going to have some sort of sealant, whether that's going to be silicone, self-leveling sealant, butyl. Anywhere where 2 pieces come together, you have some sort of sealant. Again, on that 90-day maintenance schedule, we are going to inspect everywhere 2 pieces come together, and if there is a sealant there, we want to check the condition of it, make sure that it is intact. Generally, what you're going to find on the body of the camper is going to be a 100% silicone product. You can source that from Home Depot for touch-ups and things like that. Everything on the roof is either going to be a roof tape or a self-leveling lap sealant. Both you would more than likely have to source from an RV dealer or parts house. Again, if you see any degradation in those seals, the name of the game is to catch them as soon as possible to keep any water damage from occurring. Lug nuts, tire pressure. This lug nut carries a 65 max PSI tire pressure. That is stamped there on the sidewall of the tire, as well as the data tag on the front corner of the unit. And that's exactly where we want to run those tires. So 65 PSI is going to be the magic number for this unit, and that's right where you want to keep them. Lug nuts have been torqued to 100 foot-pounds here in the shop. Manufacturer recommends a retorque procedure the first 10, 25, 50, and 100 miles of initial travel. It is very important for us to go ahead and retorque those lug nuts down and make sure they're not working themselves loose. Manufacturer further recommends from there on after that we do go ahead and retorque those down to 100 foot-pounds every time we start a trip from there on after. So the beginning of each trip, before you pull out of the driveway, go ahead and just make sure that they are 100 foot-pounds. Coming around here to the slide, large slide-out storage compartment here. Just keep in mind, use common sense with what you choose to store in here. It is hanging out here kind of unsupported, so it doesn't carry a weight rating as far as I know, but I tell my customers just to use common sense. You don't want to load it up with bowling balls or rocks or bricks or whatever. Down low, and it might be hard for us to kind of talk about some of this stuff, we have your dump valves here. Now you have gray for gray water. Gray water is going to be anything that comes from the sink or the shower. Black for black water, and black water is going to be anything that comes from the toilet. So we have solid body waste here, and we have liquid waste here. Now, these are in the closed position as they sit here. To open either one of them, it is just going to be a 6-inch pull straight out. You have a bayonet style fitting here in the middle. And if we're connecting your sewage hose, that's going to connect the very same way this cap comes off, which you have keyholes in the cap, and then you have studs there on the dump. So we put the keyholes in the halfway point, give it a quarter turn, that's going to lock it on. Now, even when you are hooked up to full-time septic, it's very important that we keep this black water valve, especially in the closed position, and we're going to use the monitor panel on the inside and only dump as necessary. Very important that we keep that solid body waste in as wet or flowing condition as we can, and the only way to do that is to keep this valve in a closed position unless we are dumping it. Gray water, not as important. If you keep that open or closed during use, there's no solid waste in there. You don't have any flow issues, things like that. But it is a popular option to dump your black water first and then rinse with your gray water. And even more important than that, treat these like a vacuum lock. So if you're doing that scenario, make sure you only have one open at a time. You don't want to do any have any cross contamination or backfeeding issues. So if you dump the black water first, close that before dumping the gray water, vice versa. Also here we have a black tank flush. This is going to work well with your dump valve here. Now let's talk about the limitation before we get too far into it. The biggest limitation with the black tank flush is there is no check valve. There's nothing to keep that water in the tank in the event that you were to overflow it here. So what that means for you is the path of least resistance is the rooftop septic vents. If you were to have this valve in the closed position and you had water rushing in here indefinitely, it's eventually going to come out of the rooftop septic vents. What I recommend my customers, if you're by yourself and you want to take advantage of the full rinsing action of the black tank flush, have water, do not allow water to rush in here for longer than 5 minutes before releasing the valve down here. If you have a friend, they can watch the monitor panel on the inside till you get close and tell you to go ahead and pull it. And ultimately, if you think you're going to forget, and if you think you're going to forget to pull this or get sidetracked within that 5 minutes, go ahead and just leave this open while you utilize that black tank flush. That is the only way to make sure, I guess, you're not going to overflow that tank if you were to forget about it. So a couple of options there. Of course, you're going to get that best rinsing action if you do rinse it with the valve closed there. So a couple scenarios there for you to think about. Here on the back side, nothing too crazy for us. This unit does have a backup camera. Yours may or may not, but this one does. So there will be a corresponding monitor panel there on the inside for that. And that's going to run anytime your marker's lights are on. So it is a full-time backup camera. It receives power from the marker lights, so anytime those are on, it will have power and be running, giving you that rear view. Nothing else really terribly to talk about. You have your tail lights, license plate lights, marker lights, things like that. Nothing too awesome or crazy. You have a little obscure kind of storage compartment here. A couple years ago, they were running a tankless water heater. That was the location, was here, and they have changed things a little bit, but you have a compartment here instead of a tankless water heater. Also, you have your low point drains here. Those are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. So that's how you're going to drain everything in between water source and fixture. That's not only a part of your winterization process, but that's also just good general maintenance. Manufacturer recommends that anytime the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, that you drain all the water from the unit. That's going to be the freshwater holding tank if it's been in use, the low point drains that are here, as well as the Truma needs to be drained separate, and we'll get to that there on the inside. Lance kind of sets up this area specifically as an outside TV area. You have a TV mount here. On the inside, we'll take a look at the actual physical TV mount, but the idea is that you attach that to a full-time television set, a secondary television set, and you put it on the mount there, attach it to the mount, and then you have your either 15 amp outlets here, a couple all-weather outlets, If it is a 110 volt TV, and if it's a 12 volt TV, you have a cigarette lighter receptacle there with a couple USBs. So whichever TV you have, you can power it, and you do have the mount there so you can watch TV out here on the outside. Speakers, lights, things like that. We're going to get to those here in just a few minutes there on the inside. You do have your hood vent here. One thing that is important to remember is that you do have to physically open that before you cook a meal there on the stove. And also remember to close it before you camp, or before you pick up shop, or clean up shop, or whatever, however you want to say it. Before you pull away from your campsite, make sure that is closed. Standard RV style handrail is going to lift up and fold against the door. I think that's a better option. Folds good, well against the body as well. So whichever you like, you can run it either way. Step just folds right in, pulls right out. Nothing too crazy. Same things we saw here. We have a light there, tap light, gives you lights this compartment, and we have your sewage hose storage here. It just has a little door there, which is helpful. And then we have your solar plug there. This is a Go Power solar plug. This plug here is going to be designed for a portable solar panel. Anything that kind of fits into that portable category is effectively going to be like a battery tender, battery charger. However, it is essentially plug and play here. So this is a direct connection to the battery. We're going to plug in here. Your charge controller is going to be built directly onto the panel. Makes things easy and very user friendly. Now down low we have a secondary propane port. Now this is a quick disconnect, kind of air hose style coupler with a locking tab there. So we'd slide that back. We'd insert the male end fully. Once it snaps back, we're on, and then we turn that valve in line. And this is going to help to power any high flow propane appliance will work. So that's gas grills, that's propane heaters, propane fire pits. All would be an excellent addition to this unit utilizing this secondary propane port. Also, here in this compartment, your spare tire is mounted on the underside of the unit in between the frame rails. If we remove this white disc here, might be tough to get your fingernails on the underside. That's going to expose, again, a 3/4 inch drive nut. You can either use the 3/4 inch lug wrench that's on the front of the compartment there, or the unit should carry its own specific crank handle for this. But it is a gravity feed, very much like what you're going to see on a pickup truck. It's counterclockwise, I believe, to lower it, clockwise to crank it back up. But once it makes contact with the ground, you can then muscle it on out of there. When it does come to changing a tire, we're going to first check that your tow vehicle's jack is going to be enough to effectively lift this high enough to change, to change the tire. You're going to put it directly on the axle as close to the tire as you can without it interfering in your work. Do your business, and that's it. So it works out pretty well and easy to get to there with that gravity feed spare tire. That just about covers it here on the outside. Of course, you can see we have the awning out, but we'll get to the actual function and push the buttons there on the inside, or at least talk about them on how to run that in and out. That's just about covers it here on the outside. We're going to head on the inside. So coming into the unit here, you're going to find your interior, exterior light controls, as well as your awning switch here, and of course your Jensen stereo here. Switches here, courtesy lights, just going to be a common switch you can hit coming into the unit to light your way, a familiar switch. Awning switch here, you can see that's that lighted red switch. That's going to be the awning lights on the outside there. Lighted because when the awning is in the in position, you cannot see those lights. And then your patio light is here. That's a three-way switch, so if we go all the way up, that's going to be a amber colored LED. If we go all the way down, that's a bright white LED. And then middle in that is going to be off. Now you have a one-touch carefree awning here. It is equipped with wind protection. Now what that means is if I were to go outside and pull down on that awning, it's going to automatically retract, or if you have a high wind, it's going to automatically retract. Not something I would necessarily bet my lunch on, but it is a nice feature to have. For that to be in effect or turned on, this switch does need to be on. Of course, very importantly, before bringing this awning in or out, this door does need to be closed. So you can go ahead and close the door fully, and in this event, we would hit, we have it on, we're going to hit retract. Now, if something, and you can see before it gets too close to us that is coming in. Now, if something gets into our way and you know, we say we forget to close the door, if I hit that awning in the position that it's going to stop. From there, I can either extend it back fully or retract it. And then in this case, we are going to bring it all the way in, so I do want to go ahead and retract it. It is a one-touch awning though, so you do only need to hit that button once. And it will kind of throw it for a loop if you do kind of continue to hit that more than once. So I am going to shut this door so we can move on. We have your Jensen stereo unit here. This is CD, DVD, AM, FM radio, Bluetooth. All of those features can be utilized through this guy here. On button here. Can hear that radio. Mode display button here. This is going to cycle you through the modes. You got Bluetooth, auxiliary 1 in, auxiliary 2, which we have USB inlets, 3.5 millimeter jack inlets there. Coaxial, optical, HDMI ARC, where in this event it would communicate with the television as long as they are utilizing that HDMI port on the television, and they are. So what that means for you is if you're watching any digital over-the-air programming or anything, you know, via satellite through the TV, you can backfeed it to this unit like a stereo or like a receiver, and it would then give you kind of a surround sound feel on these speakers here. Now you do have 3 zones in this unit here, so let's get some noise on there. So A is going to be the speakers in the dinette area. B is going to be the ones here in the bedroom area. So you'll have 2 speakers above the area there. And C is going to be the outside speakers. So be careful. You kind of know the person in the campground with the new camper because they'll be watching something here on the inside and they'll be broadcasting it there on the outside. So make sure if you're not purposely trying to listen to music outside, make sure you have C off there. Turning around here, we'll talk about the TV since we already have that pulled out. On the roof, starting here is going to be your antenna booster. Now this corresponds with this antenna right above my head. As you can see, this switch is what turns that antenna on. Now you do have an on-off switch on the actual antenna itself. That is just physically turning these lights off, which are your signal indicator. If you're sleeping here, you may find those lights intrusive, so it is nice to have the option to turn them off. With that antenna booster on, the signal indicator on, I can go ahead and rotate this antenna to search out the best signal available. The more light you see, the higher signal you have, and that works well. Now this is an always up antenna. Doesn't have a travel position. It'll travel in any position. You don't have to worry about cranking it down or anything like that. If we're utilizing the park cable service on the outside, that antenna booster does need to be off. So that light needs to be off. That's going to allow that cable signal to bleed through, and we can again use it for a park cable service. This is a 12-volt TV. Could just as easily accommodate a 110-volt TV. This HDMI cable, that is what is communicating with the stereo. And then we have your satellite inlet there. When it comes to locking this TV in its travel position, we have your this little ribbon here, and that controls that latching mechanism. We just want to push this back until we hear that click in, and that's it. That's going to lock it down for travel, and then if we were unlocking it, we do just need to go ahead and pull that. This window here is all of the windows in this unit are going to function the same. You have these three, in this case you have three tabs here, and we're going to lift those up. And then you'll have multiple positions as to where that window will stay open. I believe on this one you have 3 positions. And then if we want to close it, we lift past that last position. You'll also have a vent option here. So if we put these windows in that middle channel, that's going to give us a vent option, about a fingertip's worth of opening there. Allows you to let the camper breathe or vent the camper with it still being relatively secure. Now on the way in, before going down the road, we do want to make sure that these are fully latched, and that is all the way back past that plastic there. Also, each window is going to not only have a privacy shade there, but will also have a screen as well. So that's going to be the very same for all of those windows. The front one, it has a slightly different shade, but still very comparable in terms of function. So that one is just a friction fit, just pulls down or pulls up. Easiest way to kind of talk about things on this wall here. Starting down low, we have a 12-volt cigarette lighter style receptacle, a couple USBs, nothing too crazy there. 15 amp outlet. Again, nothing too crazy there. Thermostat here. It has a single mode button, and then it has about 10 different modes and fan speeds and things like that. Biggest complaint you have with these is if you miss what you're aiming for, you have to cycle all the way through. So you have fan high, fan low, then you have cool high, cool low, and then cool low auto, cool high auto. So the difference between all of those features is that if we're either on low or high fan speed and not into that auto side of things, that fan's gonna run indefinitely whether it reaches this temperature here on the thermostat. If we keep that in auto, it's going to reach that temperature and then shut off, very similar to what you would have at home. This also on this same thermostat is going to be, well, excuse me, I was going to say that your furnace is going to be on your thermostat here, but that's not the case with this model. So this is only controlling your air conditioner here. We have your slide room in and out switch here. Now this is a Schwintek system, so it is very important that that slide is either fully engaged, come fully in or fully out. Avoid short bursts. That Schwintek system can bind if you do kind of operate it in short bursts. So fully in, fully out. Hold the switch here until the electric brake is engaged. So until it stops and settles, then you take your finger off the button there. Same on the way in. Hold it until the slide stops and settles. You'll know when to remove it from the switch. Reading lights here, switch is right there on the fixture, so nothing too out of the realm there. Pantry, we have your monitor there for the backup camera. We have your TV mount there from the outside. We didn't talk about this too much, but when you're, of course, attaching this, you're going to put the top on first, and then you have this little relief here. So if you hold that in, that's going to allow you to overcome that ledge on the bottom. When you release it, it's going to lock right there on. Of course, goes without saying, this is only designed to be used when you're parked. You're not going to want to go down the road with your TV hanging out there on the outside. Owner's manuals, service things, they're going to be right there in that messenger bag. Nothing too crazy with that. Now, this is your Truma panel here. We can start talking about that, and then we're going to go down and actually look at the unit and talk about some things with that. Now this operates, I compare it to like an old BlackBerry if you have any if you're familiar with any of those. What that means is this motion here, that's going to take you through the options or the functions, and then to select it, you push that in, and then you only have a back button. So when we look at these functions again, this little looks like a motorhome. That's going to be your heater, your heat, or your furnace in the unit. If we the next one there, if we go one over, that's going to be your your water temperature. And as you can see, as I select these, they start blinking. So this is going to be your hot water heater. These are going to be your sources, either gas, electricity, or a combination of both. And then this is going to be your fan speed. This is going to be for setting a timer for one of these appliances to run. This next one's going to be the actual clock on the display. And then lastly, we have your settings button here. Now going right back to the top here, and when we talk about the thermostat temperature there, you have off, and then as I turn the knob, it's going to increase that temperature there up to 86 degrees. Once I hit it, find a temperature I like, give that another tap, and then you can see up here things have changed a little bit. Now I have that flame there, which is telling me that it is starting to heat the unit to that temperature. If I go one over to the hot water heater, of course it would be off. Economy, which is just going to be the most efficient use of your sources there. I have hot, and then I have boost. Now if I put this in the boost setting, so right now I have the unit is trying to heat up via the furnace as well as heat some water, but I put it in that boost mode. So what that means in that boost mode is it's going to put all available power into heating as much water as it can as quickly as it can. So it's going to, once it has a full tank of hot water, or it's going to, as it does that, it's going to momentarily power down the furnace, and then it's going to put all available power into heating that water. And then next up is going to be sources. I have gas, I have mix 1, I have mix 2, I have electric 1 and electric 2. Now the mix 1 and the 2 is a combination of course, electricity and propane. Mixed 1 is going to be a low power, low energy consumption or power consumption, all focused on that electricity side. And mixed 2 is going to be high power consumption or high electricity consumption. Same with electric 1 and electric 2. It's just kind of like a high and a low. If you're like running on a generator, you may opt to go kind of low and slow to keep that generator from running too high. And then next up is going to be fan speed here. Again, we have that eco. We have high, eco, and high are our choices there. And again, to confirm that, we are just going to tap on that. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn all of these off because we just don't need them right now. Turn that down to off, confirm it. And then it'll enter in standby mode. As long as you don't see anything up here into this top median, that means that nothing's turned on. So anything that is on and working is going to be in this top median here. Once that display dims down, then it is effectively off. Now we have your smoke alarm here. Now this is a 9-volt smoke alarm. Just like at home, it'll it'll let you know when it needs to be changed. Just like at home. This is going to be your temperature, your sensor for the Truma system. So if you're wondering what that is, of course, that's actually your room sensor for the Truma. Now, before we talk about the refrigerator, while we still have that Truma fresh on our minds, let's come down here and actually take a look at the unit itself. So the physical Truma unit is located down here in this cabinetry. Reason that we are talking about that and I'm pointing out the location of it is you do have your bypass valve here. Now it's very important that before we introduce antifreeze through the system that we do bypass that Truma. The directions on how to do so are on that tag, but the long story short is you have a valve back here. We are just going to rotate that into the up position there, and that's going to tee off that inlet and the outlet to the Truma and create a loop in the system so we don't fill it with antifreeze. So we're also going to drain the unit from this compartment here. We're going to utilize the automatic pressure relief valve here. Now that's actually a safety feature. If the pressure inside the unit grows to be too high, that's going to automatically relieve that pressure. In this scenario, we are going to use that to drain the unit. It is important that we do drain the Truma system separate of the low point drains in the freshwater holding tank. And to do so, we just flip that into the up position, which I'm not going to do so because I don't want to make a mess there on the outside, but we'll just flip that into the up position there. So hopping back up here to talk about the refrigerator. This is a 3-way refrigerator, a Norcold 3-way refrigerator. Runs on AC voltage, runs on DC voltage, as well as propane gas. So you'll come to it, it'll be in the off position here. I'll go ahead and turn it back on. It'll kind of go through a boot up procedure. It's going to turn on to the last saved setting. For us, that was AC voltage. Now to cycle through the modes, you have a little touch screen square here, and that's going to cycle through the modes. As we look at these modes, we have A with a plug. That's going to be auto AC. What that means is that it's going to default to AC voltage if it's available. If AC voltage is not available, then it's going to automatically start lighting on gas. That seems to be the most popular, most user-friendly option, is going to be auto AC. Now, if I hit it again, it's going to just be in AC mode. If I interrupt that AC power there, it's going to just shut down. There's not going to be that automatic switch over to gas. 12 volt. As you can see, this display is blinking. That display is going to blink if it has any trouble on any of those sources. So if there's no gas, it doesn't light on gas, it's going to blink like this. If it's on AC and there's no power, it's going to blink like this. The reason why it's blinking on the 12 volt side of it is because ammonia absorption system refrigerators in general are pretty inefficient on that 12 volt side of things. And the manufacturer, Lance in this scenario, didn't want you to accidentally go ahead and push that, put that into 12 volt mode. And if you're like boondocking or something off grid, potentially run your battery down very quickly, because this will do so. So what they did is they made a secondary switch here. It's up top. It's reefer 12 volt. If we go ahead and turn that switch on, it's going to allow that display to stop blinking, and we are running on 12 volt power now. It's kind of our opinion as a dealership to kind of very much use that 12 volt power at your own risk. Again, it does have its fair amount of limitations, which I'm not going to go too far in depth with, but just kind of do your research. Make sure you kind of know what you're doing if you do choose to run that in 12 volt there. And then last on our modes is going to be propane gas. That's going to be denoted by the little droplet there. And this actually runs most efficiently. This appliance does run most efficiently on that propane side of things. That's where it does do its best work. You'll use whatever source you have available and which makes most sense for you. Temperature control is here. The more bars you see, the cooler it is in the unit. And then lastly, this box here is going to be for a seal defroster. Now that just is turning on a little heating element that is actually run on the inside of here. What that does is just going to melt any ice that develops there, so this seal can make a nice tight seal every time. Moving on here into the kitchen area of the unit. Nothing too crazy to talk about. We do have access to hot and cold water via the water pump today. You have the pull-out sprayer with the different spray modes there. That's pretty standard stuff. Sparker igniter on the cooktop here. So we'll turn this to light and go ahead and give that igniter a twist clockwise, and that's going to go ahead and light the burners. And we have, we can choose a high or a low flame there. Oven's going to be lit kind of old-fashioned way with a long stem barbecue lighter and utilizing a pilot here. So first off, we're going to turn this to pilot. We're going to push and hold that in. While we're pushing and holding that in, we are going to come down here with a long stem barbecue lighter, and we are going to put our flame in between that prong, those two prongs there. So you got a thermocoupler and the actual propane line. We're aiming for right in between the two of them while holding this on pilot. Once we have that pilot light lit, we're going to give it a few seconds to heat up that thermocoupler. And then we're going to turn this to the temperature we're aiming for on the dial there. Below that, we have your fuse panel breaker box. Opening this up, everything here on the left side is going to be for your automotive blade, your automotive blade style fuses there. Those are going to be your 12-volt appliances. Everything in terms of function is labeled there on the door. Everything to the right of that is going to be your light switch style breakers. These should look familiar. Probably have some of these in your fuse panel box at home. These are resettable. These are replaceable. Not a bad idea to pick up a variety pack of fuses and keep them with the unit. On this wall here, we have your carbon monoxide LP leak detector, as well as a couple 15 amp outlets. Now, it is very important that we do test our safety equipment every time we take the unit out. That's not only your smoke alarm, but your carbon monoxide LP leak detector, as well as your fire extinguisher, which is by the door here. And that's going to have a test tab on it. We're going to push that green tab down. If it springs back, that means we have life still left in the unit. If not, it is time to replace. Here also in the kitchen, we have your water pump switch. That's, of course, again, how we're running the unit there with the water pump. We're pressurizing that water system. And then we have your monitor panel here. This is going to give you a real-time readout of where your tanks sit in terms of level of full. So the more green lights you see in this case, the fuller it is. So on the battery side of it, they actually give you some voltage readings, 12.3, 11.7, 11.2, and low. And then on the tanks, you have empty, 1/3, 2/3 full. And again, you push the button, corresponds with the level of lights corresponds with the full. Battery, to get a real readout of where your battery sits, you do need to unplug the unit. You need to unplug the unit and then go ahead and test, and that'll give you a more realistic expectation of where your battery sits. Galley lights here, which is going to be the soffit lights up top, and then the sink lights, which is just going to be the underlighting here. Also in the kitchen, we have a GFI outlet here. If you see that red light, that does mean you just need to reset it, and that's going to be by pushing the other button there. Cooktop, I know we talked about the stove already, but I feel the need to remind people that make sure you allow this cooktop to cool down completely before we shut this lid here. This isn't a warmer, this isn't a griddle, this is tempered glass. I have seen these crack when used improperly, so keep that in mind. Dinette here, we'll go ahead and put this cushion down here. Now this does make a bed, secondary bed to do so, and I'm just going to talk about it today. We're not going to actually do it. The table's going to separate from those two pieces, come down, rest on these slats, and then we're going to go ahead and remove this middle cushion here, the short cushion. We're going to use these two back cushions, lay them out, and that's going to create a secondary sleeping area for you if you have any guests or small children in the unit for them to sleep. Now these lights up top here, these ones are actually on a dimmer, so you have the dimmer switch here, which is cool. You can dim out the lights and then finally turn them off, however you choose to operate it. Vent here, so no fan in this particular vent, but it is pre-wired for a fan, so at a later date, if you wanted to add a fan here, you could do so. Would work out very easily. Bathroom door does just have this very simple catch there, which is nice. That's going to keep that from swinging when you go down the road. And then if I, man, this is a small bathroom. This is tough for both me and Clint to get in here. But you have your shower here in the standard RV style shower head with that on and off. That's going to help conserve water, allow you to cut the flow of water without changing your mix here. The expendable shower curtain is nice, especially in a bathroom of this size. That's going to give you more kind of arm room, especially if you're a big guy. That's going to help out a lot. We have your medicine cabinet here. Again, nothing too crazy there. Toilet is going to be a pedal flush toilet, so it will be a light, if I can find it, light press to fill up the bowl, and then it would be a full press to flush. Not a bad idea to keep a little bit of water in the toilet. That's going to help keep those bad smells down. Of course, single ply RV grade toilet paper needs to be used, as well as chemical treatments, things like that. If you have any questions about the products to use for those, feel free to ask our parts department. And then we have your standard exhaust fan here. This does have a fan unlike the one we just talked about. And that is your standard RV exhaust fan that's going to help draw out any moisture in the air when you are taking a shower. That just about covers it here on the inside of the unit. If you do have any questions about anything we've spoke about, anything that we can go in further, go further in depth with, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you very much.